I was asked late yesterday there's an Indian of Nispad Ka'alocha and Chalila Loy Nispad Ka'alocha. To anticipate a hesped on such short notice that should be Ka'alocha, especially with reference to such an Adam Gadol Miyod, is somewhat absurd, to be frank with you. And it is with great trepidation, personal trepidation, fear, that I stand before you, but I could not say no. And the reason that I couldn't say no is because even though I was not really a Talmud in the formal sense, and even though the beard and the kapota bespeak perhaps slightly different perceptions and orientations, we were in fact very close, and I loved him very, very much. And that is the matir, if you will, for even making this attempt. The Gemara in Maseches Soita, Daf Mem Tes Amud Beis. I didn't write out a hesped. There was no time. These are just some mekoros that I am using. The Gemara in Maseches Soita, Daf Mem Tes Amud Beis, tells us in the Mishnah, Mishemeis Yosi ben Yoezer ish Tzreida, Yosi ben Yehuda ish Yerushalayim, Botlu ha'ashkolos. The clusters of grape, ashkolos, Shene'emar, and they bring a very complex pasuk in Micha. Ein eshkoil le'achol bikura of son Afshi. The pasuk in its entirety bemoans the fact that there is no one left. Alalayli ki ayisi ki asfei kayitz ki oilolos batzir. He describes a person who passes through a vineyard and all has been gathered and collected, and there is nothing left. Le'achol bikura yivsa nafshi. I want so badly to be nourished from one more eshkoil, but batlu ha'eshkoilos. Ein eshkoil le'achol, says the Gemara, bikura yivsa nafshi. What does eshkoilos mean? What is this image trying to convey? So the Gemara says, what is the taich of eshkoilos shahakoil bahen? They possess everything. They encompass everything. But what does everything include? In Shir Hashirim Rabbah, Parsha Aleph, on the pasuk eshkoil, in Shir Hashirim, eshkoil hakofer doidili, eshkoil ish shahakoil boy, mikra, mishnah, talmud, toseftos va'agodos. Shir Hashirim Rabbah speaks of the godless of a person, shahakoil boy. And what does it include? Every facet of Torah. The niftar was possessed of incredible koiches and incredible matanos that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him, which he used every moment of every day in his entire life. Miyoim omdoi al daitoi, until the very end. A baki b'shas, who could say a shir be'iyun at the drop of a hat in every place in Shas. Someone who gave shiurim as easily in Taris and Kodshim as he did in Baba Kama and Baba Metzia. A person who was a master of Agoda and could relate that Agoda to the entire world and use his incredible knowledge not only to teach and to train, but to heal and to comfort. The Shir HaShirim Rabbah speaks exclusively of Torah, Mikra, Mishnah, Talmud, Toseftos, V'Agodos. You open up the Meiri to Saita on this daf, Mem Zayin Amud Aleph, and it says in the Meiri as follows: Mishemeis Yosef ben Yoezer v'Yosef ben Yochanan batlo ha'ashkolos ve'eshkol hu moshol al ish nichlulu bai shleimus hamidos u'shleimus ha'chochmos kulon. The Meiri does not mention Torah specifically. According to the Meiri, for someone to be an ish ha'kol bai, to be zeicha to that appellation, to be given that title, there needs to be a shleimus ha'adam which goes beyond Yediyas HaTorah, even as it is informed by Yediyas HaTorah. And what does it include? Shleimus hamidos. Rav Aharon Zeichet Tzadik v'Kadosh Livracha l'chai olam haba. The midos that you witnessed whenever you saw him, the humility. He was always getting on the ground to help a Talmud look for something. And it wasn't necessarily a screw to his glasses. It was a person who never claimed the authority that was obviously invested in him by his nature, by his vast hasmoda, his incredible knowledge, and the huge throng of Talmidim that he had throughout the years. He was a shayef ayil v'shayef nofik. He was a person who in the end, after speaking so much and so often, was a person who revealed to you lo matzasi laguf toiv mishasika. The midos encompassed family, encompassed Talmidim, encompassed colleagues, and encompassed erstwhile enemies. His incredible sense of yashrus entitled him to the term, to the appellation ish shahakol boi shleimus hamidos. And of course shleimus hachochmos kulon. This already reflects the Pirush HaMishnah of the Rambam on that very Mishnah in Perek Tes. V'ashkolos, says the Rambam, kinui leish hakoilel hamidos hanalos v'hamadoim l'sugeihem v'hu amoram ashkolos ish hakoil boy. The madoim l'sugeihem for Rav Aharon represented two yesodos in his worldview. Number one, that what is created by the human being can be noble, can be great. But it also was informed by his very, I would say, if I would be allowed, by an extraordinary sense of the other person. By this incredible need to allow the other person some measure of greatness, some measure of chashiva, some measure of a tzelem elikim. He was such an Ohev Yisrael that he could not, he simply could not abide the possibility that the gulf between him and his avodas Hashem and the Ish HaYorei Elokim should be so far removed from the person of the street, from the Tinuk Shenishba, from the person who has absorbed the secular world and does not understand or even begin to understand. Ma Hashem Elokecha Shoel Me'imach. He could not tolerate the idea that this person was condemned forever, because he had this tremendous ava for people. He has this tremendous need for the shleimus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's world. There's a very remarkable description of Aharon HaKohen, which many of you know. Because the Pasuk says, Vayivku es Aharon shloshim yoim kol beis Yisrael, Chazal feel compelled to contrast the Misa of Aharon with the Misa of Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu led them through everything, fought for them. He's the one individual who is responsible for their survival after the Chet HaEgel. And he provided for them, and he gave his entire life for them. And nevertheless, the people were not able to understand Moshe Rabbeinu enough to love him so much that they should cry for him, Kol Beis Yisrael. Aharon, on the other hand, Moshe's brother, was beloved by all. Man, woman, child. Godel v'kotten. Why? Chazal tell us in Avos Reb Nosson, Perek Yud Beis, An hevei mi talmidov shel Aharon, oyev shalom, roidev shalom, oyev es habriyos u'mekrovan laTorah. And before we go into the Avos Reb Nosson, note the sequence of these words. Oyev shalom, roidev shalom, oyev es habriyos u'mekrovan laTorah. There are many who are interested in Kiruv maybe because they love the Rebbeinu Shalom so much. But there isn't yet the Oyev es Habriyos until after the Mekarvan LaTorah. But Aharon is described, and Talmidav Shel Aharon are described as first being Oyev es Habriyos, which itself is the Goyreim, the goad, the prod for Mekarvan LaTorah. In Avos Reb Nosson it says as follows. Melamid she'ei Adam oyev shalom b'Yisrael bein kol echad ve'echad keder she'oya Aharon oyev shalom b'Yisrael bein kol echad ve'echad. Shene'emar, the pasuk, famous pasuk in Malachi, Toras emes hayisa b'fihu va'avlo lo nimtza b'sfasav b'shalom u'v'misha halach iti v'rabim heishiv me'avoin. I think when a person saw that kind of integration, that kind of everything belongs to Hashem and everything is for the sake of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that is the agenda and that is the purpose of life, I think that inherent to every person who might have gotten lost somewhere in this world, there was a Rabim Heishiv Me'avon just for looking at him in that Beis Medrash and seeing the incredible it's such a holy naivete, but I don't mean the word naivete in any negative sense. The Rav used to describe that what Chazal meant, bas kufke bas chovke bas zayin, of Sarah Imenu, is that when you go through different stages in your life, you are obviously going to change, you morph into a different person. And each stage has its kolchos, and each stage has its unique characteristics, which most people are not able to transfer. They cannot carry that color forward because in certain ways it's antithetic. The curiosity of a child needs to be tempered, and most of the time that curiosity is lost. There was a certain sense, a trust that he had that never left him. A confidence that people are good. A sense that it's kedai to teach everyone. And for that you needed certain tools. And he believed, therefore, that this integration was necessary in a global avodas Hashem, which could break through the armor and resistance of the most secular of people. V'rabim heishiv me'avoin. And then Chazal tell us, Davar Acher, in this same Avos Reb Nosson, a little bit later, Davar Acher mipnei ma bochu Yisrael es Aharon shloshim yoim mipnei shedon Aharon din emes la'amitoi. We don't even understand the hemshech of the next words. Loi omar lo'ish shesorachta v'loi lo'isha shesoracht. L'kach nema vayifku oisei kol beis Yisrael. I remember when I was a young Rav, and my name is Aharon, so I decided I will apply this method to the first Shalom Bayis problem that I have. It came to me, swords unsheathed, And I said, I'd like to speak to each one of you individually. And I said, you know what your husband said about you? He really loves you. He really cares about you. And I did the same thing in reverse, and I was expecting this incredible moment of shalom, of tranquility, of ahava. And each one in their own way came back to me and said, Rabbi, who are you trying to kid? You think you're Aharon HaKohen? And where did I go wrong? What did I miss here? And the answer is right here. ויאמר לאיש ששרחת ולא לאישה ששרחת אבל מוישה מויכיכם בדבורים קשים נאמר ויבכו בני ישראל את מוישה. The question is, if that's the case, that he never gave anyone teichacha, and that's why they love him, that's a leader? That's a moire derech? What is the praise to Aharon, the Yifgo Yisai Kol Beis Yisrael? Or maybe it's not a praise. Maybe lahefech. Did Aharon not ever give teichacha? So for that we have to understand a few lines before, which I skipped over. Kishahaya Aharon mahalich baderech pada loy ba'odam ra oy ba'odam rasha. You hear the lashon adam ra oy adam rasha. V'nasa loy shalom. And yet he gave him shalom. L'mocha bikesh oisa ish laver aveira. Omar oili eich esa einai achar kach ve'ere es Aharon. The incredible stira of encountering Aharon after doing an aveira actually prevented the person from doing that aveira. V'rabim heshiv me'avoin. How was it that v'rabim heshiv me'avoin? Because b'shalom u'b'misha halachiti. Aaron's mitzias, his presence, the knowledge that he's there, the knowledge of who he is, the knowledge of what he represents, that shleimus and that shalom and that avas Yisrael, how can I possibly be in the same base medrash with him, be the same dalet amas with him, see him on the morrow, and how is it possible that I should do this aveira? That was the teichacha of Aharon. Of course he was moichiach, but he was moichiach by demanding of himself. He was moichiach by his incredible hasmada. He taught not to waste a second. I don't know that I would be rushing to give an example that in the last 19 seconds of a Super Bowl, one of the teams won, and he comes into the Beis Medrash and he says, you realize what 19 seconds can do. Don't waste a single one of them. But you have to understand what just happened. Something that seems to be totally remote and frivolous, something that was of a moment, gives a person a certain high for a second, and then you forget about it. Yesterday's Super Bowl is as irrelevant as a piece of newspaper that wraps the fish the next day. And yet we take this image and we say, Kindalach, do you understand what Hasmada means? It doesn't mean keep your sdarim. It means every second counts. Because if they can do something in 19 seconds, look what you can accomplish as an Eved Hashem. And this was all, not a Musa Shmuz, this was all in 6 words. Because Aharon just has to pass by. And Rabim Heshiv Me'avoin. Of course, for me, and I have to say this, the next lesson would be, so why bother with the Super Bowl anymore? Because every second counts. And maybe that's what happened. How do I know? Because clearly his sense of Torah and his sense of Avas Hashem, to learn Torah every moment of every day, whatever that in his mind encompassed, but it's for the Ribbon Shalom, and it's through the lens, the Aspaklaria Me'ira of Torah's Hashem Tamima Meshivas Nefesh. How could anyone learn anything other than that? And that is why he produced so many thousands of Elef Yidden Talmidim Muvhakim who are tremendous B'nai Torah and who love to learn. That was Aaron's Teichacha. You see, without a Teichacha Gluya, you have to be an Adam Gadol Miod without stiris. Because the first thing a young person picks up is stiris. What happens when you get closer and closer? Does he become smaller and smaller, or does he become a greater giant than before? That's what you saw just now. And to know and to feel that you are in the presence of this incredible amount of godless, a true chasna d'bein nesiyah, a person who grew up in the shadow of Rav Hutner and became the son-in-law of the Gadol Hadar Rabbeinu, a person who grew into the Gadol himself that he became and was. This is all a person of such shleimus, of such incredible integration, that every single moment of every day was not just Avodas Hashem and Ahavas Yisrael and Midas Trumiyos, but it became in its totality the Isha HaKol Bo, Batlu HaEshkolos. It's very fascinating. One of the Kanoim in Yerushalayim heard a hesped. You have to be mispalo that there will still be such a freedom. Frankly, I am somewhat pessimistic. Gedolim, there will be. That kind of Isha HaKol Boy, it's a very tall order. It requires the shleimus of Torah that is being described in Shir Hashir and Rabbah, Mishnah, Gemara, Keseftos, Agodos. And it also requires the Meiris, Shleimus HaMidos, Shleimus HaChochmos Kulam, because the Rambam says, Midos HaNa'alos, V'Hamadoyim L'Sugeyam. Very tall order, Isha HaKol Bo. And that is what we lost. And that is what I lost. This is Hashem Yisbarach. It should be an incentive that whatever we do L'Shem Shamayim. That whatever we do is with the hasmada to know Kol HaTorah Kula. Nothing less. That whatever we do should be full of Ahavas Yisrael. And should care enough about other Yidden that we shouldn't write them off before we encounter them. Before we encourage them and before we love them. To be the Rav Shalom, the Rav Shalom, even before the Kol HaTorah. Because if the Ayavas Habliyos is the incentive for the Kol HaTorah, then you will have your Ish Shahakol Boy Yehi Zichroy Melech.